Hello, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural Untitled Construction Tech Podcast. I'm Luigi. I'm CEO of BuildVision. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Andrew from Join and Mike from BuildVision. Guys, introduce yourselves.
Mike,
Mike Powers, the founder of BuildVision. Luigi, thanks for pulling us together. Spent the initial 5 years of my career at a large general contractor, Turner, and then made the jump to the tech side. Excited to talk to you guys kind of through an unfiltered lens of how we're seeing construction in the construction tech space.
Sweet. Thanks for coming, Mike.
yeah, great. I'm Andrew Zukoski. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Join. My background is in tech. Actually, fell sort of ass over tea kettle into construction technology about 10 years ago. I've been running Join for the better part of a decade at this point.
Sweet. So why are we doing this? This is a conversation for decision makers in construction, just to understand what's happening in the marriage of the world of technology and construction. Things are moving really quickly. A lot of things are happening on a weekly basis. We're three people who like to talk about these things. We figure we might as well record it and give it to everyone for free. So let's just get started. So the first thing to talk about is Agentic AI. Over the last week, we saw a few things that were really interesting. One, the rise of OpenClaw. If people haven't heard of OpenClaw is an open source framework for plugging in various LLM providers, Anthropic, OpenAI, etc., into basically a computer via a VM or a dedicated computer like a Mac Mini, and giving it access to everything, all your credentials, all your websites, everything. And you talk through it through either WhatsApp or Slack or some other messaging service, and it does a lot of things. So, the first question here is, OpenClaw seems to be taking the world by storm. Then you have, in construction, dedicated, purpose-built providers for construction documentation like Autodesk, Procore. Mike and Andrew just brought up SharePoint and Microsoft is actually a place where a lot of data lives. Who's going to win? Who's going to win? Is it going to be the platforms that are going to deploy their agents? Are they going to be open source wrappers like OpenCloud that just have access to computers? I personally don't even know. What's clear is like where the data lives gives an incumbent an advantage, but OpenClaw seems to be showing that's not necessarily true. What do you guys think?
I don't know, man. Like OpenClaw, rose very quickly, but it implies that there's low switching cost for whatever people were using before. Like the next version of OpenClaw could grow just as quickly. Like I got a strong stance on this. I might agree with both of you, or I might disagree. I think it's going to be the horizontal providers that are also the LLM, foundation model trainers and providers, and it's going to be the companies that have relational databases and file stores, and there's not going to be anything verticalized in between. At the tool provider level, at the service provider level, I think it's very different. But I think it's going to be 100% horizontal. I don't think vertical wrappers are going to bring anything like radically special to the table, because at the end of the day, they're calling APIs and other systems, and the amount of investment that the construction technology wrapper will be able to command is much, much less than a horizontal wrapper. Like we don't have Excel for construction. We just have Excel. We don't have Power BI for construction. We just have Power BI. We're not going to have like agentic platform ABC for construction. We're going to have a horizontal provider.
You think ultimately like the Procores and the Autodesks don't have as much of an advantage going into this era because how low switching costs will become?
Yeah, whatever this agentic, whatever this means, but this layer where you're coordinating LLM tool calls, I don't think that they have an advantage. I don't think the applications are going away, and I think that the data that they have is not going to go away. So I don't think they need to be nervous about this, but I don't think it's vertical providers that are going to capture that AI layer of value, whatever it ends up being.
One question is for both of you, based on you both really focus on the pre-con space, specifically in the design space. Like Procore is obviously the job started and building agents on top of the job that's already started. Autodesk is in the design space. Are you seeing value creation for your users because you are now seeing every project, you're helping them win projects, you're really at the cutting edge for a contractor to actually bring in revenue? Where if you think about how Procore's agentic workflows are kind of oh, I already won the job and now I'm on a job and there's not as much revenue tied to it. I'm curious how you guys are thinking about that, and does that change your answer, Andrew, of hey, at our business we're going to be able to build X, Y, and Z to drive revenue to our customers because they're in Microsoft already, or because they're in these foundational like data file shares services?
I don't know, Luigi, you gotta.
I don't know. Like Procore is not super involved within pre-con from what
Right.
I see. I see Autodesk more involved within pre-con. I think the problem with pre-construction and where people really struggle is that it's kind of one of two workflows that don't live really within Autodesk or Procore. One workflow is quantity takeoffs, where you're just in the drawings and you're drawing squares and polygons and stuff. And then two, you're looking at past data and trying to figure out what the rough order of magnitude is for this project. And so that context right now I think lives really outside of Autodesk and Procore.
Yeah.
And that was really attractive for provision when we were thinking about, okay, should we focus on ops or in pre-construction? Well, in ops, we said, or the bet that we made was, hey, all of this context already lives within Procore and Autodesk. It's going to be trivial for them to use this information
Right.
later. Whereas in pre-con, if we do a lot of work with regional and lower mid-market contractors, the number one thing that they struggle with is like, hey, I'm spending a lot of time drawing polygons and I'd like to stop that so I can focus on higher value tasks. And that hasn't necessarily been solved yet. People like Toggle and Bob Yard and some of these other providers are moving there. But then there's like the other workflow. So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for calling out that we are impacting top line with our customers. I appreciate it dearly. It's an important point. I think the world has like a sort of dated view of pre-con, that pre-con is free-con. I think, Luigi, we actually disagree about what pre-con is. The like quantity takeoff and assigned cost view is somewhat dated. Like when our customers share their pre-con workflows with us, when they draw it out, like, yeah, there's a box for QTO and there's a box for estimating, and then there's like 20 other processes. Like contemporary pre-con is this intense coordination problem. Like you're procuring certain things at certain times long before the design is finished. You have to coordinate all these different things that are flying around. Like you have cost that has to be developed. It's very important. You also have schedule, you have risk, you have contingencies, you have the design, like all these other concerns rolling around. And there's a lot of data flowing around there. It's poorly digitized, right? Because the contemporary pre-con has only emerged in the last 10 years with the rise of CM at risk and progressive design build. I don't know that it changes my answer though. Like, I think some of the fastest growing construction technology AI companies that I'm aware of, so vertically focused, like AI first companies, are helping with proposal generation and like pulling together marketing materials at the front end to help win work that way. And they're growing way faster than we are, more power to them. But I think it's going to be interesting to see like how durable that is. Like if it's like search over Microsoft Docs, our past proposals, find the jobs that we did previously and help stitch together based on the requirements in this proposal. Like 3 years ago, Claude plus connectors wasn't any good at that. It would be sort of interesting to try that workflow, like pointed just at our HubSpot today. So I still think even in pre-con, even winning work, it's going to be horizontal providers. Yeah.
Yeah, like the world that we live in is not really like we don't do a lot of design build customers. It's really for us. It's lump sum.
Yeah.
Right? It's like design bid build, have a document, it's already been done. Someone's taking the design risk.
Yeah.
Now.
Quick. Yeah.
So that's I think the difference of perspective there. But I find that in those models, like a lot of the work is like in the documents. I have to go inside the documents. I got to do things, and I don't know if that's still like generally solvable by a horizontal or a vertical solution, because you still need to understand like the line weights. And like Mike and I had this debate obviously about whether LLMs are gonna make that trivial and solve it. I still don't think that's the case. But like I don't think an OpenClaw or an Autodesk will solve that in the short term, because it's still like a thorny problem.
I should let Mike speak, but I feel like an article that made a really big impression on me that I'm drawing a lot of perspective from is The Bitter Lesson. I think it's by Rich Sutton or something. And his point is that over the last 30 years of computer science, finding like the avenues by which you scale compute on a generalized problem, like catch up and surpass any method where you like inject domain specific knowledge. That like, yeah, I completely believe you today that like a generalized model isn't going to get line weights right and like isn't going to make it on QTO. I mean, I have not spoken to an estimator who leverages automated QTO. Like people use it like to check things, but like no, I've never spoken to someone who's like, I can rely on AI QTO.
Right.
Which is sort of interesting. And I completely agree, the horizontal models aren't doing that right now. Right now, that's like still a technical problem. And you can inject like all this specific knowledge into it. But if you wait 2 years, is the generalist model going to have caught up?
That was Mike's point. That's exactly what.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. And I can stop talking, drink my coffee, and Mike can.
I'm leaning towards agreeing with Andrew's perspective, and I think one of the bets that we're taking is the construction. If you think of like how Harvey operates as a business, if you guys are familiar with, like, Harvey is literally like, whatever you want to call it, it's a semi-wrapper over the foundational models to help lawyers be more efficient. They just raised, I think, another $1 billion at $11 billion valuation. They're at $190 million in revenue, projecting forward about $600 million in revenue by the end of 26. And if you like look at the market, you're like, all right, well, how many lawyers are there actually that can use this software? Right now, their average cost per lawyer is like $1,900. And their goal is to get into this world where their average cost per lawyer is actually replacing lawyers. So it's $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 so that validates this $11 billion valuation. So relating that back to like what we're seeing is like, doing like simple tasks that like a PM or an estimator already has to do in order to like do 10% of their job. I think there's value in that, but I think the shift is like, how do you get into this like multiplayer world where the general contractors talking to the subcontractor, those subcontractors have two different instances of two different sets of documents that they're trying to normalize. Foundational models are going to always have a hard time jumping that gap. I think there's an opportunity for vertical tools to merge those two pieces together, use the foundational models to help normalize that data, and then provide that actual value. So you can see this world where, hey, there's a shortage of estimators in the United States, in Canada. I'm just going to hire provision AI estimator to sit in this seat. And I'm going to charge $20,000, $30,000 a year for that instead of hiring someone for 80. And I think that's fascinating. Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting use. Like, even if Luigi is just a prompting on top of Gemini, I think there is a lot of de-risk that the CIO of a construction company can see by partnering with Luigi than relying on like, hey, I'm just going to let my team run with a clawbot. I would be very, very interested. I've talked to CIOs and CTOs at top 10 general contractors, and I mean, they don't even let their team use like ChatGPT. So for them to be like, hey, let's go upload all of your documents into this instance. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think my lens that I'm trying to look through is like, where's the multiplayer pieces that we can facilitate extreme value add and like create this like what we call Atlas, but it's like the structured information that's normalized. Because at the end of the day, like, we're solving problems that shouldn't really be problems. Like, an engineer builds a building, and places the 35 doors in the building, and then they compress it into a 2D drawing for liability reasons, and say, hey, I know I already did this takeoff as an engineer, but you, owner, now need to go make every one of your GCs, every one of your subs, and every one of your distributors count it 17 more times. And that's just like wasted money. So how can, like, that's why I think there is an interesting play for Autodesk, or Autodesk can continue to go upstream and be like, hey, we're going to force these pieces out. Or a company like Snaptrude is going to be like, hey, like, these quantities are going to be verified. These lengths are going to be verified. And Snaptrude or Autodesk takes the risk of ensuring that these quantities are correct. And I think it solves a lot of these like problems. And that's where there's huge opportunity in vertical AI, because those pieces are so unique and so customizable. And there's like visual pieces in that as well.
Yeah, so I agree on that example, and I think the key thing there is, I feel like a SaaS shill from 2016, like
SaaS is dead. Come on,
like that there's actually this like complex domain-specific workflow that you need to understand. You actually need to help people standardize around. You're gonna have to market. You're gonna have to sell. I think there's something durable there. That could be a great business. Are you taking investment? But I don't know that the like key thing there is anything to do with the AI, right? Like, I guess the AI is enabling it. Like, I'm questioning my own thinking there, but like,
What workflow
You're
specifically?
convincing everyone to use verified quantities from the design tool and then having a mechanism to share them between stakeholders. Like,
Yeah.
that's the big unlock for this. If AI
That's all
lets you unlock
deterministic though.
that,
Like that's not AI. That's deterministic. Like that's
Yeah.
the more you can get down to this world of deterministic, and then how do you provide these like LLM talk tracks on top of it to like get those edge cases? Like we talked to a customer the other day that was like, sometimes they put my piece of equipment in a pit. It was that affects the flow of air over the coil to pull heat out of the coil. But they never draw the pit correctly. And like, how do you bid? I don't think there is not a world where you bid that correctly. Like you're just like throwing a number out there that like this pit that you're placing this piece of equipment in has enough space around the piece of equipment to pull air off, like without having an exhaust fan or something crazy. And like those pieces, like there's no world where a foundational model is gonna be like, hey, that's the answer to that one. But like that's where like, because these pieces aren't like actual installed systems that are working, and then like that feedback loop of hey, here's what's on the drawing and here's what actually is installed is very, very far from being fulfilled. And like companies like OpenSpace have a very interesting perspective of like, how do you actually use all of this information that we've like captured on cameras and videos to actually map it back to the as-built so that you can actually start trying to train something, or give OpenAI or Anthropic the data of that to actually start training a model around these like discrepancies of real world versus what's drawn on the drawings. And that's a huge gap that's going to take a very, very long time to fill.
These drawings ultimately are just like made by humans without any real consistency. And I think this is what introduces a lot of problems. And nobody wants to take the liability of what's in those drawings. And everyone tries to shield liability as much as possible. So I think
let me ask you a question, Luigi. Around that, would you absorb the liability for a premium?
Yeah, potentially. I think if I could, like there is insurance now for agentic workflows. And if you could have an agent with with like a pretty good data set, and you knew your performance relative to a benchmark, like you could underwrite that risk, and you could offer that as a service. And I think, there's been a lot of.
How much would you charge? Let's put you on the spot. How much would you charge?
I have no idea. It depends on how performant performant the agent is, right? And like,
oh my god! Yeah. But it's a universe of corner cases, and like you can set up this adversarial thing. You got this like adverse selection. Like I'm not going to buy the insurance for like the jobs I understand well. I'm going to buy it when I was like, well, I just got like the intern threw those drawings together, but like my risk profile as a firm is all right. Like,
but if you're a GC and you can offload the risk to the quantity takeoff to a third party, I think you would do that 10 times out of 10 for the right price, right? Like you don't want that long tail risk of any errors and emissions. And I think I can see a world where that's possible, because I think software providers seem to ask themselves, like, where is the durability in your business?
Yeah.
And if it's going to be in performance, eventually you're going to be so performant that you'll guarantee performance. And,
Right.
you'll maybe underwrite that risk with like a third party. But anyway, so like getting to the point.
The reason I asked that is just like reiterate, because like if you think about like, hey, like is Salesforce going away? The reason Salesforce is going to stay and continue to be a foundational software is because like the CIO at any company is not going to go rip out Salesforce and vibe code a CRM where Salesforce has been tested by 200 million different penetration attacks, and that CIO can blame Salesforce if something goes down, doesn't hit their SLA. I think what's really, really interesting, what I think what Luigi could do is literally be like, hey, like, here's the cost. We're going to charge you $100,000 to do a takeoff on this project, guaranteed to be accurate. Because like for them, like the cost might be $200,000 for them to do a takeoff or do an X, Y, and Z or do it. And like, I think you can get almost up to 100% of the cost, maybe even a premium to take off that liability. I think it's a fascinating model.
Yeah. What happens when you fuck up? Like,
that's the bet though, but that's the whole bet. Like why is everyone so risk averse?
You just gotta engineer it. You just gotta engineer it the right way.
But the construction is this insane universe of corner cases. Like we were talking to a customer, like it pointed us at the pre-con problems we're solving, where they made a material substitution on a facade, like directed by the owner somewhere during pre-con, and the material failed, and they couldn't. This is like a classic documentation thing. They just couldn't document that the owner said like, yeah, use it, and so they were liable for the facade. It was a $20 million hit. Like, ooh, that's a lot of $100,000 takeoffs. Like, that I got to stack up at pretty good margin to absorb that. or pass the risk off to someone else. But
you have a portfolio of like 50 projects. Okay, that one went bad, but now the premiums on the other 49, it's made up for it. I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, it's fair. I mean, you're describing a general contractor's business, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
That's their risk
diversified portfolio. But you know what? I do think companies like Salesforce and Procore and Autodesk are a lot more susceptible than people think. And it's because, well, look, if I take Salesforce, for example, people are saying like, no CIO is going to make a decision to move off Salesforce, right? And no one's going to vibe code. But I actually don't think the vibe coding example is fair or intellectually honest. I don't think that's the real risk. The risk is there's now 30 other solutions that are a lot faster and can raise venture capital very quickly and are more AI first. And two, if we do live in a world where OpenClaw or OpenClaw wrappers or agents are at your beck and call, I do believe that they will spin up some software. Okay, we've been hiring since we raised our seed for like 5 months. Okay, we use Ashby as our ATS. Do you guys use Ashby?
Mm-hmm. No, we use a Google Sheet.
$400 a month. $400 a month. Okay.
Pass.
I use my LinkedIn inbox.
We could have vibe coded Ashby as a Google Sheets wrapper just to sit on the website. You don't need 80% of what's in Ashby for where we are right now. And I do think the people who are using Salesforce aren't those people, to be fair. But I do truly wonder, the people who are using Procore, what if they just want 20% of it or 15% of it or 10% of it? And maybe they will just settle for the up and coming company that just did this in 3 months.
But like in construction, it's not about the product, right? It's always about distribution and implementation. That's like the reason that like you won't rip Salesforce out. I think there's like, yeah, we can blame them. Yeah, we don't have to pay for a new thing. Yeah, it's penetrated, tested, and we trust it. But it's like all our people already know how to use this fucking thing. Like the CFO gets on the public earnings call and says numbers that came out of Salesforce in our accounting system because everyone in the company knows how to use it. Like the curve of human adoption, like you still have to get like everybody to adopt whatever the tool is.
So
I don't know how that. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think one other, like, just to expand on that piece, like, I think what's interesting of like, if you look at like, as an example, like how Rippling and Deal were able to grow into the HR space. So Rippling and Deal were startups. They focused on selling to startups and they grew with those companies. They weren't going after customers that had ADP, Paychecks, or these massive payroll software. And their bet was that companies would continue to grow. I think the challenge in construction tech specifically is there's not 100 construction companies that are coming out of YC every quarter starting companies. It's these massive corporations. Like when I was selling software to Autodesk, we were selling enterprise contracts to enterprise customers. I managed the top 100 general contractors in the country. Even if they were a Procore customer, we were just giving them build away for free with the expectation like, hey, like let's start some projects on Autodesk Build. We know you're not going to leave Procore tomorrow because that project that you have that started yesterday is going to be on Procore for 10 years. But it is a long, long process to switch to Autodesk Build. And I know it's different than like, I know Luigi, you sell more like SMB and mid-market. It's not like the enterprise sale. I'm curious, like, is there that pull for like an up and coming PM tool to actually be able to provide enough value to replace at an enterprise level? And what are those pieces that happen? Because there's not like this green field where you're like, hey, we're going to partner with, Andrew's general contractor. Andrew has 2 people today, and then he has 100 people tomorrow and 1,000 people next year. It's going to be the big players that are like if you look at the top 10 general contractors, they're still growing massively, and they're taking a large market share. And I know it kind of goes into our next combo about data centers, but that's the way, at least how I've been thinking about it. Maybe that's the wrong way.
So if let's say you both are running a GC right now, okay, what would be your stack? Are you staying on Procore and hoping that the data grid acquisition, gives you agentic capabilities to, increase productivity? Are you diversifying and keeping some information on SharePoint and hoping that horizontal tools make you whole? What would your play be right now? What would the stack be specifically if you both are running general contracting companies?
Well, I selfishly think that CM fees are going to zero at large general contractors. So I need to reduce any additional costs that I have in that perspective and focus on other avenues to create revenue. I would lean into my ShareFile Microsoft Copilot instance and see how far I could get.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I agree on the large GCs, CM fees trending downwards and profitability coming from other contributing things. But I feel like the thing I'd focus on is like financially instrumenting my business. That like if it's a large GC, the story might be very small if you're like a small GC, you just can't stand up these other lines. But if you have 3 self-performed subsidiaries, essential equipment yard, and you have financial products that you offer to your projects, like how do you track and control margin contribution from each of those? Like, can you describe the margin control from each of them? Like, can you accurately state whether or not a given job that comes in with a 0 CM fee, like, will be profitable enough for you to take the work? And I think construction has like, it's very fragmented. It devolves a lot of authority out to the projects. It devolves a lot of authority out to individual operating entities, right? Like self-performed divisions, often for good reasons, operate a little bit at arm's length from like the CM parts of businesses. And I think actually wiring that up would be priority 1. It's really boring. Accounting software. Yeah. I don't know about the agents, like accounting software.
We're all somewhat bearish then on the lock-in of Procore and Autodesk, at least in terms of agentic capabilities.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
I agree with that.
So things are moving pretty quickly. 2 things happened in the last couple of weeks that, well, one tanked the stock market. Claude released legal skills. You know, who knows if it actually did, but that's what the narrative is. And 2, Trunk Tools released free contract review, which is a tool. You know, we offer contract review, so does Document Crunch. There's a question of whether, you know, certain workflows that are being solved by AI are trending to 0. You know, my personal view is that the value of contract review is going to 0. And, you know, it's actually very simple as to why. Contract review, you need very little context. You just need the contract, right? There's a fixed taxonomy of contract types. Okay, maybe it's sprawling a little bit, but basically you get a CM agreement, or you get a CMAR agreement, or you get a lump sum agreement. You know, there's various templates for those. So the context is you shove it in a LLM box, and then there's enough intelligence to know if it's doing a good job right now. You know, if you go on ChatGPT for free and ask it to review your contract, it'll do a decent job. It won't be perfect, but it'll do a decent job. So I do think that contract review is going to 0. And if I were a constructor right now, you'd have to ask yourself, what do you really want? Do you want a workflow that's highly standardized? If so, you may want to work with someone. But if you just want the answer, you probably can go to ChatGPT for 60% of the work. What do you guys think?
I thought we were supposed to shout at each other and disagree.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the point of, I think the liability sponge is the risk. And I think the user, just going to take the other side of this, I think the contracting company would rather say Trunk Tools, DocuCrunch did something wrong on that extraction than...
Are you going to accept that though? Like, one of your employees let's say you have devolved signatory authority to like multiple of your employees. One of them comes to you and like you're fucked. Like, you've got a $20 million hit coming, and it was like clear as day inside the contract. And they say like, well, I reviewed it with like Trunk Tools before I signed it. Like, no, that's insufficient. Like, I'm still gonna like we're still screwed. Like, I can't actually offload the liability. Like, I still get the IBM. I get to
because they're not taking liquidated damages. But so that goes back to my point of like, I think the software company should absorb the liability of that. Yeah.
You're saying,
and I think you can charge a premium to do that. I think that's a differentiator where like, hey, like you have this wrapper, and maybe that's the risk that you could take, and you can underwrite this risk that we just chatted about. Like, I have the wrapper, and if I'm wrong, I'll take the liability hit. Because we've had customers ask us to take liquidated damages claims on delayed equipment that I can't control. They're like, my switchgear says 60 weeks. If it's over 60 weeks, I want you to take the risk. I was like, I'm going to charge you on $1 million switchgear $2 million in fee to do that. Yeah. And they're like, but again, it's like, that's the game. I think that's the interesting game that can be played with AI.
Well, this is why people like.
But that's sorry. What's interesting there is it's not like CIO. Oh, Amazon went down. It's not my fault. Like, it's like a different business unit that's buying that. Right. Like Luigi, it's not Luigi selling to the CIO, an estimator. It's Luigi selling to the VP of estimating. Like, hey, hire our agent things instead of like people.
Because if the estimator was wrong, they would fire the estimator. Can they get liability whatever that gate is for a soft, like, can you offer that liability sponge to that user?
Sorry, I mean, estimators are wrong all the time, depending on what you're talking about, quantity takeouts, but they're usually not, they're not fired.
Not fired.
Yeah, it's an impossible task.
This is why people still want to hire like law firms, right? Anybody who uses us or Document Crunch, and I don't know the Trunk Tools tool, how widely adopted it is yet, they're still hiring lawyers. And the reason they hire lawyers is because they need someone to sue if things go really bad.
Yeah.
So I think there is an opportunity for someone to step in and take some liability. You'd have to be really strong in your confidence with your analysis to make sure that that's true. But I will say, like with the Trunk Tools tool, it's not like, I'd say it's actually more of like a lead magnet than it is a tool, right? It's a form you fill out, you don't get access to a tool. But Andrew, you just launched something as well, right?
Oh yeah, definitely a very serious thing that we did. But we were thinking, what's better than free AI, contract review? It's actually getting paid for AI to review your contracts. And so, if you go to freecdr.ai and upload your contracts, you'll get a review back. We're definitely not a liability. No warranty on what comes back. But we did this basically we just shoved the thing into Claude. That's what it does. And the point is just that our point in bringing this forward almost as an art piece is that the foundational models are moving very quickly and are developing new capabilities at a fast rate, and there's a lot to be said for interacting with them directly.
I do think, based on how things are moving, if I were a construction executive right now, I probably would not be locking into a contract longer than 1 year.
Yeah.
Things are moving so fast. If you're going to go to a vendor and say, hey, I want a 3-year agreement, okay, well then I'm gonna have to slash your prices by 50% because I'm underwriting so much risk based on the speed of where things are going.
Yeah.
To some extent, the way you build a business, if you build a business a certain way, you can be worse than what's generally or widely available based on how fast LLMs are moving. If you built, let's say, non-LLM based architecture for contract review with ifs and thens, and you spent $10 million doing that, you are way worse than what's available right now.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very careful about who you're, going into bed with, proverbially, obviously. So, probably take like a 6-month contract, 1-month contract.
Yeah.
Because I use Claude Legal plugin for our internal documentation, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, let's go to the next topic here. Data centers. So JLL reports commercial starts in construction are effectively stalled. Data center starts, though, surged to a record 62 billion in December. We're talking to a good friend of mine who's soon to be a director at Pomerleau, large Montreal-based GC, is going to be leading some of their data center efforts. It seems like large GCs are all in data centers at this point. It's one of the fastest growing segments. Turner, obviously, and DPR are really into data centers, and they've been reporting crazy.
Isn't it the only growing segment? Power. Power and some
power.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think infrastructure is probably still growing, right? There's still a pretty sizable backlog, and I know Trump has passed some legislation, I think, to encourage.
Yeah, good point.
Infrastructure starts, but it probably pales in comparison to data centers. So the question is, if you're a GC, should you just go into data centers? Should you be taking some component of that work? How should people be thinking about it?
I mean, it's funny that only some GCs are capable of delivering that work, right? This graph is insane. Thank you for pulling it together. But that's I don't know, you guys would have your own view on this. From what we can see, data center work is incredibly concentrated among the largest builders, which means that their concentration is absolutely insane right now. It's majority of revenue, majority of pipeline is coming from this single sector that has 5 owners. So I don't know. That's my answer.
Mike has some slides that he pulled up. It is actually crazy to see how fast this segment has grown. And if you put it into perspective, when we saw this being shared over the last week, there's more CapEx being deployed now than there was in the U.S. interstate highway system. That CapEx spend is some of the largest I think that we've ever mobilized as like a Western nation. Obviously, I'm Canadian.
I think
still crazy.
yeah, like one of the zoom outs on that is also like if you look at the Apollo program back in the 60s and 70s, the percent of GDP the Apollo program was higher by I think fivefold than this percent that we're of GDP that we're spending on data centers. So in the grand scheme of things, like it's not railroads yet. It's getting towards railroads, but like if the outcome actually provides value, and the other interesting data point where you see like OpenAI and Anthropic released their forecasting. I think by 2029, they're expecting over $380 billion in revenue from their tooling. The entire B2B SaaS market across the globe right now is $750 billion. Microsoft is 200 billion of that. So that's either saying that TAM of 750 drastically grows, or these Anthropic OpenAI like destroy all B2B SaaS. But like these investments of $177 billion by 2030 need to have like a 10x return. And that's, $1.7 trillion, where we're sitting at $750 billion in ARR right now in software spend. It's very, very interesting to see how those numbers like jive and how that balances out as we go through these investments.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like the SaaS market that it's pointed at, right? Isn't it the services market, right? Like,
but it hasn't been able to prove
provision,
that. Like
the estimation service is like the big bet. With Harvey, it's like we want to take over legal services, like.
But no one's been able to prove that yet. Yeah, that's the bet. That's how they're underwriting that. But like, you're not seeing. I mean, even in the Cursor world, like a Cursor replacing software engineers. You're getting into that fallacy that you actually don't reduce work. You're actually hiring more engineers than you've ever hired before because you're trying to release products. So you're filling this bucket, and it's like
that's not true. No.
What's not true?
With Cursor and Claude Code, I mean, we've been running this business now for about 3, almost 4 years. The output is crazy. It's way different than when we started before we were using these tools. Everyone is shipping 3x more software than before.
Right. But what I'm saying is like you're not I'm still hiring the same amount of engineers.
Yes.
We're just shipping 3 times as much. That's what I mean.
Yeah, you're not replacing it, but it's not like you're spending less on B2B SaaS. Well, right? Like you still have your GitHub subscriptions.
If you look at the same output that you needed, right? You are spending less money on employees that you would have otherwise hired for the same output. And by extension, you're spending less on software that you would have otherwise purchased because you don't have as many seats. So that money's now being absorbed by Claude and by Cursor. Like for the output that your team has now, let's say you have 10 engineers. Maybe you would have need 20, right? So that's 10 seats that you haven't bought B2B software for. And now that labor, that's all being siphoned in by Claude Code. But you're better off for it. And I think we're better off for it as well. So
if you guys are seeing 2x like actual acceleration from Claude Code, which is deeply integrated in my laptop, like if you're actually seeing 2x in value to customers, like good for you. We are not seeing that.
So you don't see 2x?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying you're not seeing 2x the velocity from engineering?
No.
Really? Well, we
not at like individual tasks, definitely. But at the level of like building the right thing, integrating into the platform, delivering it to customers, like the overall output is not 2x faster. It might be as high as 10% faster right now, and maybe we're just bad at it. Like I'm very open to that possibility.
There's a way to do it, but like I think we can. I would love to talk to you about like what we've done specifically, and like there's specific strategies. What we found was like the constraint really was who's writing good PRDs, who's making good product decisions. That was a constraint. And it still is some constraint, but anyway, we can talk about that. I think someone said.
Just as a data point that we moved our entire document processing from, we moved it to Lambda and AWS. It would have taken, I think our engineer said 2 weeks before, and he did it in an afternoon, as an example, because Claude was able to like run like little agents to like test all these little errors that were popping up. And what I would say with that is like I'm not saying, hey, I want I can do 2 times as much work, so now I only need 10 engineers instead of 20 engineers. I'm saying I want 20 engineers doing I'm gonna continue to hire engineers to go do 40x because Claude, Cursor, all these tools are coming up and starting to absorb our pie of workflows. So we need to operate faster. So I'm not cutting engineering seats. I'm cutting everything but engineering seats.
Yes, you're still hiring engineers, but you have less engineers than you would have otherwise.
I think we can cook. I think we can just build faster. I don't know. That our bet is like that. If like, hey, because I just looked at like the Series B deck that we had for Building Connected back in the day when we raised our Series B, and we had like 60 employees, and what was it? 30. Half of that was go to market. I think in today's market, I think out of those 30 employees, 7 or 8 could do the same capacity that we did at Building Connected going to Series B. But you're looking at like the maker side, and the maker side is like every one of those seats would still be filled. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, like I will say, I don't think people in construction companies are seeing those same gains. I don't know any construction company owner I've spoken to where is saying like I can do twice the amount of work now with half the labor.
Oh, for sure. And the person has to be on the job. The PM has to be on the job.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, like, we see that in engineering. Like, we had one. I made a LinkedIn post about this, but we had a software vendor who would record our calls, and then they kept everything in a repository, and we'd search across them. And literally in one afternoon, my CTO coded a Chrome extension that scraped the entire website to extract all the transcripts, and then built our own version of that software. And that's like a small amount of money. That's $4,000 a year, but that would have taken much longer. It probably would have taken maybe 4 days of work. And that's one example, right? But if you can automate your process, like as we're doing now, like we have a mono repo. All our code is in a single, is in GitHub in one place. So it has all the context. We have all the business context in a single place. And I think I'm just wondering for our customers, when is that going to happen for our constructors? Like, when are they going to be able to say, okay, I need 2x less PMs and 2x less estimators for the same workload? Because we haven't seen it yet. And like, I'd love to make that reality. I'd like to make that a reality for them, but we're just not there yet.
I don't think the PM thing ever happens. Like, you're a general contractor, you're a PM on a project, you're managing a group of subcontractors. You're not going to have a robot falling around subcontractors. That PM, like, a software says, hey, I'm making you 50% more efficient. I save you 10 hours a week. You're still on the job site from 6 to 6. You're not leaving at 4 o'clock because this AI software automated your submittal review. And I think that's never going to change.
Maybe, like, I don't know. I've never worked on site. What the fuck do I know? But like, I feel like all the reality capture stuff might make a dent in that.
So it's not even that. So I was a field engineer at the Eagle Stadium, and I was in charge of carpet.
Nice.
Literally laying out carpet in like the all the areas. That guy was there. That team was there from 6 to 6. I couldn't just like go home at 4.
Yeah.
I was the Turner representation of the project. I like had to manage these people. Like, no tech is replacing that. And then you're talking about like this data center build out, like where now there's 10x as much data center build, and you can't find people to put in, and you can't get warm bodies to sit in a data center to manage a data center that has experience. Like, I can't go manage a data center. A data center is a very, very complicated system. It's electrical, mechanical, that you can't screw up. And like, those people are few and far between, and they're getting paid a premium. We're hearing stories of like electricians flying private from data center to data center, making like 30 to 40K a month. Yeah. And they still can't find enough electricians and mechanical and mechanics. And I don't think tech solves that. Like, maybe robotics in the future, but then it goes back to our initial point of like, the real world actually hasn't been like processed out to be able to make these decisions. It's not a factory line where you're screwing in a bolt to a car. It's there's some interesting things like Jacobs is doing at scale, where they're starting to like modularize their electrical and mechanical packages so that those can be done offsite. You're seeing Turner do this. They spun up an offsite manufacturing company to do this. I think those things help. But like, that growth curve is wild. It's like there need to be step changes in how these things are built.
I don't know. I think it's possible. Like, in talking to a lot of our earlier customers, which were more subcontractors, they get on site and they tell me that about 40% of the time they're actually doing the installation. 40, 50% of the time they're actually doing the installation, doing the work. The other 50% of the time, they're trying to figure things out. They're coordinating with the superintendent. They're trying to find the laydown area. They're missing a part. And like, that's all inefficiency, right? And this is from one of the people who were really close to like the Rumbix team, or the Rumbix team that was trying to, solve some of the time and material tracking before, Xtracker, which is now ClearStory. And I think that all inefficiency can be solved, right? And so if you can eliminate 50% of the work, then maybe you can go home at 3 p.m. But, that's not solved yet. But I think suffice to say, data centers are great. I don't know if people are gonna. I don't know if people can do that. But I do wonder what the world looks like for people who are not in data centers. Like, are they still experiencing the same growth? The people I speak to, they say yes. Like, I see a lot of GCs that are still growing, and I personally think like the need for construction is going to be infinite. I don't know if that ever really goes away, but like I can see growth across all sectors going forward. What do you guys think?
I mean, we all took venture capital on that story. That is a true statement. So like, it's very, very hard. I'm trying to take the opposite position of that. No. It's actually to contract, and it's going to zero.
Okay, I know we're coming up on time. Predictions for 2026. Give me your juicy predictions for what's happening in the world of construction and technology. Andrew, let's start with you.
CapEx projections for data centers go down.
Oh, really? Wow,
that's my projection. Could be wrong.
Well, a revision. There's going to be a revision downward for CapEx.
By the end of the year, we'll revise.
What's that driven by? Is that driven by opposition, power limitations, water issues? What do you think?
Opposition, power limitations, the insane revenue numbers that have to be created to like support that value. I don't know. I think it's hard to build. I think it's hard to build at that scale, and I think the value is questionably demonstrated.
Mike, what do you think?
I think the easy prediction is Autodesk or Trimble makes a big play and announces an acquisition with a dollar sign on it. Not a hey, we make an acquisition. So that what that means is it's over a certain value because you have to like release it from an SEC perspective. So whatever that bucket is, there's going to be an acquisition that is announced with a value on it. So in the 500 million plus range between Autodesk or Trimble. That's my bet.
And like in operations and design and pre-con, what space?
What space?
I think it's going to be in MEP equipment procurement. If you ask me.
I like that. I don't even know yet. I think it's going to be. I think things are growing so quickly that there's going to be companies that are going to be able to be in that position that are. Hey, we went from $0 to $10 million in revenue in 12 months, as an example, and a large Oracle, Trimble, Autodesk makes an aggressive 50x ARR acquisition offer on that. That's my prediction of 2026.
So well with level set, didn't it?
I was telling you, I think it's not FOMO. It's like how. So for example, we've talked to customers where like they need an AI strategy, and when they present an AI strategy, they're publicly traded. It bumps their stock up hundreds of millions of dollars. So making a $10 million annual investment to get a market cap bump of $500 million is a great and I think with the contraction of these companies with SaaS metrics going down, there needs to be this very, very broad AI story, this AI play that we made this aggressive acquisition in order for them to not see decrease in share price over the next 12 months. And that's why they do it.
That's pretty compelling.
That's interesting. I think no matter what they say on their AI strategy, people are going to have a hard time moving them outside of the SaaS bucket. Anyway, but my take is somewhat along those lines. I see revenue multiples for SaaS companies, but specifically within construction, like Autodesk and Procore, compressing further.
To where?
Further.
Well, right now, yeah, further down. I think right now they're somewhere between like 6 and 7, right? They were trading at like 10 to 11. I think they go down to, between like 4 to 5. I think people.
What's the historic norm? Like last 20 years?
SaaS construction takes like 10. It's supposed to be like 10 revenue to market cap.
Yeah, but like, forget construction. Just like Bessemer tracks numbers like this. I feel like 6 to 7 is historic.
It depends
So
on
which means actually it could go like at certain times it's been higher, at certain times it's been lower. But like, yeah, that's compelling.
It's pretty vertical specific. Like look at companies like Wix, for example. Like they do website design. They're trading
Yeah,
at like
okay.
2x revenue, right? And they just bought Base 44, which is like vibe coding websites. And so like the market's punishing them.
Yeah, I saw that. The Wix one's wild.
Wix one's crazy. I think that's like potentially a good company to own a little piece of. Not investment advice, obviously. So I can see it going further down. I think people are going to really struggle with the narrative. Like this is like an SQL wrapper, right? Like I have all my data in like a database, and you have workflows on top, and like that should be trivialized with AI. I think it's going to get worse. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's it. So anyway, great first episode, guys. I really
Love
appreciate it. I'll end the call now, and then we can continue chatting.